Okay, well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Candy Shop. I am Candace, and today is my story time. Now, this story is a very hard story to tell, but today's story is titled My Divorce Story. So, for those that do not know, I've been married twice, and my current husband is my second husband. So, let's get into it. So, with my first relationship, I met my ex husband in high school. We were both new our senior year, and it was new territory for me. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a Midwest girl, and so to have to move to the East Coast, living in Maryland, and one of the richest counties in Maryland, that was a culture shock. So I also met a lot of interesting people in the DC area. There are a lot of people from different places, and so my ex-husband was actually from Guyana. So in that year when we met, from the very beginning, I thought he was very attractive. So I told my friends, like, I'm feeling him. I got a crush on him, whatever. So they tell him, and they set it up for us to meet during our little lunch break. Oh, it sounds so elementary, lunch break. But during our little lunch break, we are set up to meet. And when I meet him, I get in front of him and he says nothing. I'm like, hey, I'm Candace. And he just stands there. So nothing transpired from that. I was actually embarrassed. So fast forward to my freshman year of college, going back to Maryland for the summer. I link up with him again. The rumor was that he had finished school and decided to move to New York, but come to find out, he had actually stayed in our little community in Maryland. So I somehow we just end up hanging out and we shoot pool, and it is just like the coolest vibe. We are vibing. And I asked him about that day, like, when I met you, why didn't you say anything? And he's like, because you were all in my area. So I don't know, maybe he was shy or whatever, but I thought, like, what? I was all in your area. Anyways, so that summer, my first summer away from college, was one of my favorite summers ever. Of course, I dated my ex-husband, and we definitely hit it off. We ended up, we had a really good time that summer. Really good. I feel like it was like Grease Summer 11. So I have to fast forward to the end of the summer. I do have to go back to school. And so that is when we decided to take our relationship to the next level. So we get together seriously as boyfriend and girlfriend. And by the time, the middle of my the middle of my first semester of my sophomore year, he proposes to me. And so I ended up leaving my college in order to be with him because he proposed to me. He proposed to me at a concert, and it was actually a Dead Prez concert. My ex-husband was very, very conscious, even though he doesn't consider him, well, he's technically not African American. He's Guyanese, not Ghana, but from Guyana. So he I'm not gonna say he identified with us, but it was interesting, and I'm gonna talk about that a little later. But anyways, he proposes to me. We become engaged, and from then on, I'm living in Maryland, and it's going okay. But there would be times, and this should have told me this was a red flag right here, a red flag. When I would want to hang out with my friends, he would like call me as soon as I leave out the door. He's calling me, asking me, when am I going to be back? I get to the place, I can be going to IHOP with one of my good friends, and he would ask me, like, when are you coming back? I can't believe you're leaving me like this. I can't believe you're doing this. He had like abandonment issues, like big time. And so looking at my ex-husband's past, he actually did not grow up with his mother. His mother abandoned him. His mother was actually Indian, from India, and his father was from Guyana. And so he was actually a mixed child, and he was raised by his grandmother. She passed away, and then he was sent to America to live with his father. So his father was married to several different women, and actually the last woman that they ended up living with was the father's wife that he had cheated off and on with. And my ex-husband's mom was actually one of his father's mistresses. And so he didn't grow up with a strong mother figure. And so that played a part in why we didn't work out. He's 2 years older than me. And so he would put these responsibilities on me. Like every time I went somewhere, he was just very possessive, calling me. He was never abusive, but he was possessive. And like, I can recall going out with a friend of mine. We just went out to a lounge in DC. You know, I'm young, I'm only 22, party girl, wanting to get it popping. And I go out with her, I come home and he has my suitcases packed by the door. And then, with all of that, like my mom was very cognizant of the situation. So she ended up telling me if I wanted to continue to go to school on her money, that I had to return back to Tuskegee University. So, I said my school, I didn't mean to. But I'll probably edit that out. When I returned back to school, that was a test in itself. We ended up, it was long distance. I feel like he cheated, even though he says he didn't. But like, there was a chick at his job that he was dealing with, and then of course I had my little friends as well. But we ended up like breaking up while I was in college because we kept going back and forth. He would, at the time I had a cell phone that he was paying for, he would turn it off. Anytime he got mad at me, he would call Sprint and have my cell phone turned off. Or if he was mad at me, he would turn his own phone off, and then I'm calling all night and he'd be like, we're broken up. So the next day he would call me and be like, are we really broken up? So now that I'm an adult, I see that those were the times that he was cheating. He was trying to justify his cheating, but it was just a mess. So let me get to how we got married, because I know this story is sounding like, what's going on here? So fast forward to our last breakup. We were broken up 3 years. So I ended up finishing college. I got my degree in sales and marketing. I ended up moving to Dallas, Texas, and I got my first job. In that time we were broken up, I did have a child, and I met my son's father, and we were in a relationship. But I ended up breaking up with him, and I was single mom, working. I was able to take care of myself at a young age, so I was doing good for myself. Anyways, all of a sudden, I happened to come across my ex-husband page on MySpace. This is when MySpace was still big, and seeing him, I'm like, oh, I wonder how he's doing. So I see his MySpace page. I send him a message, which was, I shouldn't have sent him a message, but I sent him a message, and we reconnect from there. So everything is vibing. We're going good. He tells me he's in the Navy now. He's changed, because back when we were together before, he was very rigid, very religious, didn't eat beef or pork, didn't drink alcohol, none of that stuff. So we reconnect, and he's like a completely different person. He's drinking, he's still not eating pork, but he's eating beef. So he's completely different. And so he's like, I've missed you. I want to be with you. We should not have ever broken up. I've changed. I'm mature. I'm a citizen now, because at the time when we were dating before, he was not a citizen, but he was a citizen now due to the fact that he was in the Navy. So he's like, I'm a citizen now. We should get together, and if we get married, I'll get additional money for us being married. So you'll be taken care of. You don't have to work or whatever. So in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I think I can marry him. I think I can try this out, because he's somebody that I knew. He was my first love. A lot of first everythings for me. So I'm like, I think I can do this. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be just where we are trying out our relationship. But in his mind, what he told me, he was like, if we get back together, we need to get married. I'm not having a long engagement, because we were actually engaged 5 years prior to that breakup. So I'm like, okay. So I talked to my mom, I talked to my aunt. They're like, yeah, you should do it. You should get with him. He's a good guy. You don't want to raise your son without a father. Even though my son's father was in the picture, he wasn't living with me at the time. He was in Alabama and I was in Texas. So they're like, you would have a father for your child that's there. You should do it. He's a good guy. And I kind of, in listening to them, I forgot about all of the bull that happened before when we were together, like the possessiveness and constantly accusing me of cheating and different things. I just let that stuff go, and I jumped into a marriage with this man. And that was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I will say that. We got married, and he decided to stay living. At the time, he was stationed in Maryland. I wasn't moving to Maryland because I had my child, so I wanted to stay in Texas close to my family. So I ended up staying in Texas with my family. And he was in Maryland, and so I would go to Maryland for a few weeks, and then he would come to Texas for a few weeks. So some things transpired in our marriage, and I'm not going to talk about that. I want to keep that part close. I just want to keep that to me because it's some very personal things that were very hurtful and detrimental to our relationship and my health. So I'll just leave it at that. So anyways, fast forward to like 6 months into our marriage, I get a butt dial from him. And I'm like, hello? He doesn't hear me. So I hear him on the line, and excuse my language, you two. Well, you know what? I'm not going to say the word. But he said, y'all know what starts with a P and rhymes with ussy. So he's like, P is P. He's talking to somebody on the phone. He's like, P is P. So what if the girl is fat? I would still fruck her. I'm not going to say the real word. I would still fruck her. And I do it all the time. And he goes, and I hear him going into a restaurant. Apparently he has at Hooters. The waitress comes. I can hear all this on the phone. And I know there's those memes saying if your husband or your spouse butt dials you, what will you do? I'm gonna listen. So don't butt dial me, because Candace is listening to everything. And yes, I talk about myself in third person. So yes, she, me, her is listening to everything. I'm not hanging up the damn phone because you shouldn't have butt dialed me. So I listen, and he goes into a restaurant. I hear the waitress coming. He's like, "Woo, you got some nice ones," and blah, blah, blah. He's just living it up, buying drinks for everybody. I listened for a good 15 minutes. I got to take a drink of that. So after 15 minutes, he gets on the phone. He's like, "Did you call me?" And I'm like, "No." "No, I didn't call you. You called me." And he was like, "When did I call you?" And I said, 15 minutes ago. So P is P, huh? And he was like, "What?" So he played stupid. Huh? So my thing is, if you you can hear. So he was like, "Oh, I was just talking. It had nothing to do." So in that moment, let me tell y'all this. In that moment, I felt so disrespected, and I saw another side of my ex-husband, because all this time I thought he was this really good, loyal guy when he had been going out. So that told me two things. And listening to that, one, I checked our bank statement, because at the time we had a joint account. And so I checked that joint account. This Negro had been spending money at strip clubs, different places, $200 here, $300 there, all on drinks, I guess. I don't know what he was spending it on. So my mindset was different. And that was where, around that time, we ended up getting separated. And that was what started my entanglement. And if you look at my prior story, I have entanglement part 1 and part 2. So the first entanglement started after that, because all this time I had been this loyal, faithful wife. I'm trying to do good. I'm trying to get more involved in church and all that, because 1, I'm a wife, and 2, it's long distance. So I didn't want anything to mess up my marriage with my husband. So I thought I would just dive right into church, be this model, saved woman for this man. And when he was out the military, we would start our life, we would have these kids and do whatever. But no, that was not the case. So when I heard all of that going on, I checked out. Like, this Negro has been using me, and I started to feel used, because if we weren't married, he wouldn't be getting his BAH. Now, with his BAH, which is his housing stipend from the Navy, he got an additional $1,900 for us being married on top of what his normal salary was. So not only did he get his check for his salary, he got $1,900 as well, just because we were married. And so I started to feel used. Like he wanted to just do whatever. So on one of those trips that I visited him prior, he introduced me to a lady in his office, or he worked at actually the Naval Hospital in Bethesda at the time. It was the Bethesda Naval Institute or something like that. I don't know. I can't even remember, but it was the Navy Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland, and it's the President's Hospital basically. So he was working there. He was a corpsman and a petty officer. So he had other Navy people reporting to him, and then he had worked with regular civilian nurses. And so he introduced me to this nurse. And at the time when he introduced me, now this is before I heard the message. At the time he introduced me, which her name was Kim. Make sure you remember that her name was Kim. She came out of their nurses station crying, and I'm like, "Oh, what's wrong? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come up to you." He introduces us. He's introducing me to everybody in their office or whatever. But this particular lady stood out to me because one, she was crying. Two, when he talked about her, because he had brought her up before, he said she was this HOE, and that she was married at the time. She had 3 kids, and she had just had a baby by one of his friends. So she was cheating on her current husband with one of his friends and got pregnant. So I'm like, God damn, like what does she have going on? So anyways, fast forward, we decide to work it out because we were separated for a little bit, and then in between my entanglement somewhat, we would try to work it out. So in that time when we were trying to work it out, we were trying to have a baby. For some reason, I could not have a baby by him. I just couldn't get pregnant. And now I look at it as a sign. That man was evil. So anyways, fast forward to our coming up on our 3rd year of marriage. He had told me he wanted to work it out, bought me a car and everything. All of a sudden, though, a month after that, it changed. And he's like, I don't want to be with you anymore. I want to finalize this divorce, and I want to do this, that, and the other. Come find out he has someone pregnant, and he didn't want to tell me who it was. And so I'm thinking, what's going on? And for these 3 years, we are living long distance. He had never lived with me. I would just visit. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, who do you have pregnant? So what's crazy, I don't know if this is divine intervention or what, but I have a dream. And in that dream, it tells me that he has a child with Kim, the nurse that I met that was crying, that he called a HOE. So I call him and I confront him. I'm like, hey, is your baby by Kim? And he was like, who put you up to this? It's so-and-so. So he names his friend, and I'll just call him Michael. So he was like, did Michael tell you to call me? Did he put you up to this? So y'all are plotting against us? So what? I got her pregnant. I'm like, wow. I was like, no, Michael didn't tell me that. I just had a dream about it, but thanks for telling me. So in my mind, I'm thinking my husband has started a family without me. I thought we were working it out. So the separation that time, it was bad. In those times, the guy that I had the entanglement with while me and my ex-husband were separated, his wife ended up calling my ex-husband and telling her that I was having an affair with her husband, or telling him I was having an affair with her husband. And so at this point, he's trying to put it all off on me like I'm just this evil person. This Negro is telling me that if you're on fire, I wouldn't even piss on you if you was on fire on the street. I'm like, goodness, after all this time, because at this point, me and him had been together at least 8-9 years. So he wouldn't even piss on me if I was on fire, even though I don't want to piss on me. But I thought that was just like the harshest thing to say. He tried to make me feel so bad for this whole affair or whatever that I had. Come to find out, he had been having an affair with this lady, his friend's side chick. I don't know. It was so confusing to me. But anyways, when all this went down, I ended up calling my bestie. I took $700 out of our joint account and I went to Alabama and had a good time. So he gets upset. He calls me. He was like, how could you take my money? I said, the joint account is our money. He was like, well, I was saving up for a house for her and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't give a damn. Do you not know the next month he had my car, the car that he bought me, repoed from my job, which it was so embarrassing. I had coworkers running after the repo truck. But yes, he had my car repoed from my job. And I kind of felt like that was karma too from my entanglement that I had. So I ended up calling his commanding officer, and they set up a plan. I couldn't get my car back because the car was actually in his name that he bought for me, but I couldn't get that back. So the commanding officer, set up a plan for him to pay me spousal support every month. So that was good. So he's like, if we don't send you any money, definitely let me know. My ex-husband ended up getting demoted, and he called me. He was like, you told my commanding officer, do you know I could get arrested? And I said, why? And he was like, for starting a family, I can get arrested. I said, I know. You started a family, and it wasn't your family. This was the family over here. So so to make a long story short, because this is a longer story time, it comes to the point where it's like the 3rd year of her marriage, and he flies to Dallas in order to sign the papers, and we signed those papers. But in signing the papers, his lawyer tried to suggest him taking my car, the new car that I bought in my name, and he was like, no, I don't want to take it. But I thought, the audacity, like, you already had the car you bought me repo. Now you're trying to take the car that I bought with my own money, the car that you took from me and my son, because I had a son, the car that you took from me and my son, you're trying to now take my new car. So I just thought that was messy. And actually, the night that I signed the papers, he called me wanting to get with me one last time, and that did not go down. So that was my divorce story. He was an a-hole, very possessive, very evil. He changed for the worse. I feel like I was a good girl. I'm not gonna even say a good girl. I feel like I was loyal to him. I was a loyal woman, and it just was meant to be. And this is the moral of the story: do not take your exes back, because it's the same trash that it was when you left it on the doorstop or whatever. So that's it for now. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And I didn't even put my banner on here. But make sure you like, share, and subscribe to The Candy Shop. This was my story time. I am signing off. Goodbye.